Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of GFLCast. Today we have four of the total casters. We have Corsage, Diablito, myself, and Yuzanagi. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. So, as we know, Yuzanagi, you were over in Taiwan. I heard you went to one of the Girls Frontline exhibits. How was that?
That was pretty interesting. I got to meet with the Taiwanese publisher, Long Longheng, and they're the publisher for Ghost Frontline Taiwan, and we got to participate in their events.
Mmm, was lots of good merchandise there?
Unfortunately, no, they were promoting their other games.
Wait, other games? Mika makes other games?
Yeah, Arc Knight. Um, what else? There's like another um, how do I say it? Like three third person RPG handheld, mobile. But
Hmm.
I didn't really catch the name.
We'll have to check it out when it comes out. Now, Girls Frontline, was there a lot of cosplayers?
Yeah, there were a Calico that I liked. The official members of the Taiwanese cast, they cosplay as Helena and Car, and from their Facebook, you can see the live feed that they were recording during the event. And I think the Facebook page is GFL Taiwan, but I can link it in chat.
Okay. And I know they did some events like a live pool. What did you pool?
IDW.
You got the one.
You hate to see it.
Yeah, you're like, oh, 110? Did you? What recipe did you use?
We didn't get to choose. It's based on what the host. So they choose a random formula that they believe that's voodoo, and everybody pulls from the same formula. It's just RNG, I guess.
Okay then. So it's up to the RNG gods, but at least you got IDW. And I know you got some merchandise. Do they have any? I think you got Ryby is your favorite. Do they have any Ryby merch?
Unfortunately, at the event, they didn't really have Ryby merch. They didn't have any merch, but they did have they had rewards that was given out to participants who either won the quiz show or pull a higher rarity doll. So if you get like a 5 star, then you win um, the competition depending on who you're against. And they have a really nice rule over there where if uh, both players pull 2 stars 4 times in a row, then they do a multi 8 pull. So then you add up the star total from the 8 pulls, and somebody got lucky to get 2 5 stars in a row during the 8 pull. So that was pretty luck sack of them.
Dang, dude.
Jeez. Yeah, I know, right? All right. So, was there anything else about the exhibits at Girls Frontline that was interesting you'd like to share with us as well?
Um, Fun fact: they have a lot of JP merch, like the new New Year banner.
Oh.
So they got Type 64 Howa.
Wait.
So
You mean not Type 64 SMG?
yeah, the AR version.
That's a better
Oh,
one.
that is the lesser version.
I got her on KR, man. Pepe hands.
All right, so that's enough about the trip. So, as you all know, Arctic Warfare's been out for a while. I know Diablito, you went to the rankings, and you're working on leveling up some more, I believe.
We don't talk about it, man. 92k score,
Oh,
56 percentile. It's a work in progress. You know how it is.
well, at least you're getting better, right?
Ah,
Wait, yeah, that's true. Weren't you like 59% initially?
exactly. Through my magic
Exactly.
chieftain
Do you have enough
powers.
repairs?
I have over 100, so yes.
All right, so you'd be good for the next ranking. And Corsage and Yuzu, Corsage, how about you? Did you do any of the rankings yet?
I have not done any of the rankings yet because I'm waiting to enhance like 7 more equipment, and I need like 100 more cores, and then I'll definitely try out the ranking. However, I have been getting the daily missions for Red Packets done, and some of the notable pulls that I've gotten are 2 Type 95s. I also pulled a life today in my first try, by the way.
Oh,
And I also pulled a Calico, so that's my Arctic Warfare loot, I guess.
I've gotten nothing good out of the red packets. I've gotten resources, more resources, some pills, maybe some cores, and then a bunch of furniture. Other than that, I've gotten no T-dolls, no skins. I've had horrible luck with.
Surprisingly for me, I've been doing pretty decent on red packets. I got a car 98 and a Somi, which I can't complain because it fills up my T-Doll collection. And also the tokens that comes out of them every now and then is pretty pog. For the New Year's, not the New Year's, the Lolly Gacha is probably coming later this month with the whole
Yeah,
G36
I believe
login.
so. Well, yeah, it's gonna be later this month.
So, I have a decent amount of tokens saved up, around 2,200. So I'm about to go ham when it drops.
Nice.
Oof.
What about you, Yuzu? How's Arctic Warfare going for you?
I'm the best. I just started chapter 2 for Arctic War.
Pog.
Haven't even gotten through the story yet.
No, I was busy working.
Yeah, man,
Oh
you have
yeah,
to
true.
go be an actual human being.
The audacity.
All right. So let's get into our first topic of the night. Let's go to Springfield's classroom. All right. So we have back to Springfield's classroom. The first topic we're gonna go over for tonight are handguns. Now, handguns are possibly the most versatile weapon in the game. Do you guys agree? Handguns are very versatile. They can be just about.
Yeah, pretty much.
Really flexible.
Now, the thing about handguns is that they have very low HP and they typically don't do very much damage. But do not let that fool you. They actually pack quite a punch, not themselves, but for everyone else.
Yeah.
And Dia, can you move to the next slide?
There you go.
Thank you. All right, so some handgun basics. So we want to go over things like what do handguns do exactly? Corsage, I believe you had some things prepared about that.
Yeah, so uh, I think there are 3 types of handguns, handgun types in my opinion. So you have the buffers, such as Calico or Grizzly. You also have debuffers, or NZ75. And then you finally have utility handguns, such as M1911 with a smoke. You also have CZ75 with a big axe that she throws at people. So
Yeah, I'd like to.
yeah, to continue, generally you want to use the buffers in rifle teams. Rifles can only be buffed by handguns and like very few other guns, such as AUG, but you don't want to use AUG with a rifle, let's be honest. Um, you want to be using debuffers to help your handguns tank better, but by tank better, I mean boost their evasion because let's face it, their health is pretty low. And for the utility handguns, you don't really want to use them that often. I think they're a bit niche, minus maybe 1911 because the smoke grenade is pretty good. And CZ75, you pretty much only use her for 5 handgun teams because she's the big damage dealer for right now
Yeah,
in EN.
yeah. And we also got Contender as well. She's got like a she's like a bamboo in a way, except a handgun.
I wouldn't say that bamboo because it's only like 4 times damage, and plus like her damage is pretty low anyway. However, she does add 40% damage taken to all enemy or to the single enemy that the skill hit.
Yeah, and it force fires everyone to focus that one target. So regardless of their targeting, she's going to force everyone to attack that one specific target, right?
Right. So like contender is very useful for bossing teams, regardless of whether you're using like handguns or assault rifles or machine guns. And the good thing about contender is that she will always target a boss if the boss is on screen. When it's
And so some special things that are only pertinent to handguns. So there's two main things that I like to point out for handguns. The first thing is that in night battles they give vision of one additional square node around them. Because if you don't have that handgun, then they're not going to have that vision. Another very unique thing about handguns is their buffs. They buff much differently than other T-dolls, don't they?
yeah, the handguns buffs will buff everyone in the team unless specified. So K5 would be a an exception, but she's not in the server yet.
And in addition, the more dummy links they have, as you stated, for every dummy link, the buff gets better and better and better. So
Right.
you have the minimal amount at one link, but once they're at times 5 links, they become very strong.
Right, which is why you don't want to be using handguns in battle until they hit at least level 80, because that's when they can equip their exoskeleton. And ultimately, you want to have them at level 90 so you can dummy link them so their tile buff is the best.
Maxed out.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question for all three of you guys. Would you recommend leveling handguns as a new player?
Personally, I don't think handguns should be used as a newer player because, again, their biggest use as both tanker and buffer is more emphasized as they get higher in levels. So when your resources are limited as a newer player, resources I mean by literally resources or cores, it'll be very difficult to make use of the handgun, and you're better off using something like an AR or an SMG, in my opinion.
For me, handgun is really debatable because one thing, handguns are the most versatile gun in the game. Unfortunately, like Courses said, they really need a lot of investment, which you don't really have as a beginner. Because, as Courses said, you need to be level 80 optimally for them to equip a exo so they can tank. So if you're starting out and you want to, you know, have some tanks, I'd rather level SMGs, um, for your starter team rather than handguns because handguns require a lot of investments. As Corsage and you brought up, you need to have the dummy links for the tile buff to be efficient, and you need the levels to get their evasion high enough that they can tank due to their low HP stat that they have as handguns.
For me,
Now,
oh,
go ahead, dear.
like they both like Yuzu said, the when a handgun reaches level 80, that's when they equip an exo, which is why I don't recommend them for newer players. Because without that exo, they're not gonna do that much of a good job at tanking. Like for early game, you would most likely like rather use a submachine gun instead of a pistol for tanking. And that also for the newer players, you have like only a 1 times, 2 times, 3 times link, so their buffs are not going to be at their strongest. When SMG is like always have like the same buff no matter what. For me at
I
least.
wanna I wanna add to something that Dia mentioned, which I believe was like I think has to be brought up is that when you're starting the game, you don't have quick repair contracts, and handguns have pretty low health, so you're going to be repairing them pretty often if you want to keep playing the game. Which is why, in my opinion, I think SMGs are better because of the higher health pool, which means lesser repairs. So thanks for Dia for pointing that out.
Yeah, they do have while they do may have the lowest repair time out of all the weapons. Like you can get a fully damaged handgun and it takes like what, an hour to repair them? About right?
I don't remember.
It's pretty short.
I forgot the formula.
It's okay, it's okay. Another thing about handguns, so we're talking about how some handguns are built can do some tanking. Now, this does not apply to all handguns. It's only certain handguns you want on the front line.
Yeah, so main one would probably be like, well, her health stat is pretty high, her evasion's decent, and she has a buff or she has a debuff that debuffs the enemy's accuracy, which in my opinion is better than buffing your own evasion, just because of how the hit rate formula works.
Yeah, well,
Another good tank would be 5/7 because her health pool is pretty decent and she has really high evasion. But you don't want to have 5/7 in the front line just because of her buff tiles. Yeah, you can manually change their position once the battle begins, but that's just my opinion.
mhm. All right, so let's move on to rifles now. And rifles. These are an odd bunch. The damage, just like the ARs, they damage just like them, but they do their damage a little bit differently. Correct? And what I mean by they do the damage a little bit differently, rather than having a higher rate of fire, what they do is they fire a lot slower, but their hits go in harder. They also have a bit higher crit rate than assault rifles as well. And
Yeah, they have a 40% base critical chance, whereas ARs have base 20%, with the exception AUG, which we covered last episode, and RFB. Those have 30% critical chance, and I believe M4 SOP mod when she gets her modification, her remodel.
so you give them a fully maxed out crit scope, which is plus 48%, then get them a small crit increase from another handgun. They can be pumping out 100% crits, can't they?
Yeah, pretty much.
Another
Well,
fun thing.
yeah, the critical chance has to be like 60% or so to cap it out. It's like 55 to 60, but yeah, you're absolutely right. They can't reach 100% crit chance.
Another good thing about rifles is that they use AP ammo, which is very important for going against armored units, as this causes their shots to bypass armor, because armor is the bane of a lot of assault rifles like existence. Some of them they hit very fast and don't hit very hard, like G11. So armor is a nightmare for G11 if she can't punch through it.
Yeah, that's true. Another cool thing about armor piercing is that if you do fully pierce the enemy's armor, you do an extra 2 damage. It's like kind of inconsequential, but I just want to point that out because I discovered that a few days ago, and I think it's really.
All right, here's a quick question: if your damage is mitigated by armor, can it crit?
Yes, it can, but the critical is calculated a little differently because it's calculated after the damage has been mitigated by armor. And the indication that you land a crit on an armored enemy is pretty hard if you don't have AP ammo because they're all great numbers. If you're not like actually calculating the damage ranges by hand, it's kind of difficult to see if like a number is crit or not.
Hmm. And rifles come in lots of. There's like two flavors of rifles. You have the buffers, which can be represented by M14 and WAD2K on the screen, and then bamboos, such as Kar 98, Springfield, and Mosin.
I also want to point out that they're self buffers, not other buffers, so
Yeah, they're
they'll
self
be buffing
buffers.
themselves.
Yeah, self buffers, my mistake. And IWS, she is her own ball of wax. She's technically a self buffer, is she not?
Yes, self buffer and debuffer.
Debuffer, yeah, she debuffs her own rate of fire, so she hits like a truck, doesn't she?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so another important thing about rifles is their targeting priority. Diablito, can you use the next slide? So if you look on stream right now, we have an example of WA2K taking some shots. Normally, enemies are going to be attacking the guard first. The guard is the Sangus Ferritito holding the shield. Rifles will instead target the back line. So in this situation, WA2K will be targeting that Jaeger before she starts to target that guard. That's one of the big differences that differentiate rifles versus other T-dolls.
Yeah, and that's another reason why rifles go along so well with handguns, because handguns don't have a high health pool, and frontline enemies with shields, such as the guard you see in the screen right now, or Aegis, which are these guys, they don't hit very hard. So by deleting the backline, the enemy backline, you're getting rid of a good chunk of the enemy's DPS and allowing your handguns to tank a little. And in addition, the frontline enemies, the frontline enemy units such as guards and Aegises don't have that good accuracy as much as say Jaegers do. So again, that's why rifles and handguns complement each other very well.
I
Okay.
want to bring up a fact that you brought up on your stream um, earlier this week, um, and I found it really interesting. So previously, how the targeting system worked for RF, um, it's whenever there's a new target or whenever there's a new enemy that is the furthest enemy that just appears in the range, the rifles will automatically switch to that target. Um, until Mika decided to change the whole targeting system. And now, with rifle targeting, once they're logged on to a certain enemy, they will always, try to fire or shoot at the enemy. So for it to change, to retarget, you would have to cancel their attack by moving them forward and then moving them back. The only one rifle that still has the old code is M1 Garen, and that's because Mika forgot to change it for her, and it's now a bug that they didn't fix. So you can call it a feature for her.
Yeah, it's essentially a feature because you're right. She is the only one who will actively change her targeting and then switch the back line. So one other thing that all rifles share, the tile buffs. All rifles do the same thing with their tile buffs, don't they?
Minus the Carcano sisters, which we'll be getting soon in the English
Oh,
server.
yeah, true. The Kalkan systems are they're a little bit wonky. They're different,
Yeah,
but for the most part, for the most part though, they all do the same thing, correct?
yeah, pretty much. They just lower the cooldowns for handguns in their respective tile or
And depend
tile locations. Sorry.
Yeah, and depending on the rarity, so the more rare the rifle, the more cooldown reduction they get. Now, doesn't cooldown reduction come at a cap at like 30% or 33%?
Yeah, it's 30%.
Yeah, it's
So,
30%.
and the thing about cooldowns or cooldown reduction is that it reduces both the initial cooldown of handguns and the normal cooldown. So you could, in theory, have say Walrod, who has a 6 seconds initial cooldown, pop off her buff at like 4.2.
Okay. Alright, so now that we've explained handguns and rifles, we're going to show you guys a couple of teams where we assembled, put them together. The first team we have is a Big Bamboo. And if you notice, this is represented by M99 as well as NTW. These are two of the most noteworthy Big Bamboo. I believe we have one more Big Bamboo on EN, PTRD if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but she's pretty bad. I mean, there's other bamboos, I believe, but I could be mistaken.
Well, Big Bamboo. So these two, but these are the most represented ones.
Right, NTW and M99.
So with bamboo teams, when you have handguns with them, you want handguns with what buffs when you buff bamboos? What do you want those T-doll? What do you want those handguns to buff for bamboo?
You want to have firepower buffs because they don't really benefit from rate of fire in terms of their skill active because it's only one shot. It's only one shot, so you want to make the most out of that one shot. And since it's a multiplying, or since it's a damage multiplier, you want to be buffing firepower.
Does crit help them?
No, it doesn't, because critical chance, or sorry, their bamboo shot cannot induce a critical hit. So there's no point in buffing their critical chance, in my opinion. So if you're facing like one opponent and only one opponent, then it might be better to equip an EOT. Actually, I don't even know if rifles can equip EOTs.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they can only equip VFLs
Right, it's only scopes.
as well as yes. But yes, it's a one-shot, one-kill mechanic. So you don't want to give them. You just want to give them pure firepower. And then we have the small bamboos, which are on the next slide. These are
To be
represented by Mosin and Springfield.
go back to for the big bamboo. So far, none of the EN big bamboos can crit. There is one big bamboo that can crit, and it's the Canadian's favorite gun,
Oh yeah,
the TAC 50.
yeah, the TAC 50. It's true. That's why like TAC 50 and
She is
PX4.
she's the only big bamboo that can crit, and the whole meme game about trying to get her to crit that big damage.
Oh, and we just got word in the chat. RFs can equip EOTs. There we go. But we don't have TAC 50 yet, do we?
No,
So
she's
we'll
like an
review that. So we'll talk about that later on when we get it. Okay, so the next now after the bamboos, I call this the golden standard for handgun rifle teams. When people think of handgun rifle teams, they think of this team here, which in the Koreans they call it what, Corsage? They call it. There's a Korean name for it.
the Starling combo.
Why's it called the Starline combo?
Starling. I'm not sure actually.
And so there's like no wordplay on it or anything.
Yeah, I don't know, but like they just buff the backline rifles very well. So the Koreans noticed that and then just gave her a name.
So this team here is, if you notice, SVD and WA2K. SVD and WA2K are rate of fire buffing, self buffing rifles. And if you notice, the girls that are there, most of them help them out with that. So if WA2K and Calico, both their buffs are rolling, I believe WA2K maxes out on her rate of fire, does she not?
Yeah, she does, which is why you want to have Walrod buffing SVD instead by placing Walrod or by placing SVD behind. And that's because SVD has like 3 less rate of fire, or it might be 2 less rate of fire than Watsuke. And she also has a lesser self buff for the rate of fire just because of rarity.
Mm-hmm. And SVD being at the top, so is there any benefit to SVD being at the top as opposed to WA2K?
I have no idea.
That's what I was thinking, because I would put WA2K at the top and SVD at the bottom.
Oh, you mean why? Like,
Yeah.
why Valor is buffing SVD instead?
No, why is it arranged the way it is? Like,
Oh, the
why
math
is
formation.
SVD in the 7 slot and WA2K in the 1 slot?
Because of the formation. You
Be-
want to have
because because you want to give more rate of fire to SVD, and putting wall on top would, Calico can already cap wall attack, so it's pointless to have Relwad try to cap it too when SVD can use more rate of fire from Relwad's tile buff.
Got it. We had a question in chat about it, so that's what we're getting it answered. And there is one more handgun rifle team, but we're going to go over them later on once we get into another T-Doll. And that T-Doll is actually, we have PPK. Yuzu, this is your love child here. So, what can you tell us about the Walther PPK?
All right, so as you can see, the stats on screen, she has 285 HP at level 100, so that's roughly around 57 HP per link. So not much damage she can take. Fun fact though, she has exactly 100 evasion at level 100, and she used to be the highest handgun with the base evasion of, or she used to have the highest base evasion on all handguns until the release of Chapter 7. And now it's PSM, the Chapter 7 limited doll, with 112 evasion. So She still has the second highest base evasion of all handguns.
And we just got a question in the chat. Can PPK replace 5.7 as a buffer or tanker?
So what I tell people is PPK is usually the beginner friendly handgun. So because PPK is like given to you early in the game, and she's a 2-star, so she's a common drop. Um, you can use her as like a 5.7 substitute if you don't have 5.7 or what's her name? Sketchkin, or Astra at the time, due to her towel buff being similar to 5.7.
By the way,
And
user, your headset's having some issues there.
mine.
Might want to plug in and plug out.
All right, give me a sec. Sorry about that.
It's still bad.
So bad.
Yeah. Sorry for the audio quality. Corsage and Yuzu are not in optimal conditions right now, so they're
Yeah,
having
it's
some
got bad.
issues with audio quality at this time. I'm sorry, everyone.
Also, the Papega weather in California.
I'm using a USB headset.
Yeah.
Just unplug the USB headset and plug it back in.
Okay.
I'm just gonna finish answering the question. PPK can replace 5.7, or not replace, but she can be used as a temporary replacement for 5.7 until you get her. However, 5.7 is a much better tanker. She has much higher health, and her evasion is only like slightly less than PPK's.
Alright, and next up we're gonna have go over for her tile. So we're going, so while Yeez is doing that, if you look at her tile buffs, we all know, she affects rifles, and
No,
sorry,
she affects
RS. Wait, yeah, she affects everything. Why did I put rifles?
everyone.
That is the mistake on me then. Crap. Alright then, so she affects all weapons. My mistake. And she gives a rate of fire plus 32 and crit rate plus 16%. Oh wow, I made a mistake there. And her skill is Annihilation Command, which she increases all damage done by the entire squad by 10% and crit rate by 35%. So if you're standing on her tile buff and she's buffing them, they're getting 51% crit, which is overkill.
It's actually 56% because the tile buff and the skill buffs are multiplicative with each other.
Oh.
So it's a 56%, which
Oh,
is
okay.
why she herself can cap out ARs usually.
Hello, am I better now?
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
much
you
better.
are.
Okay. Yeah. So, um, as the two Corsage and Panda says, she can be a replacement for 5.7 until you get her. Usually before this event, when 5.7 didn't drop, I would recommend her for PPK or for a 5.7 if you need the rate of fire and crit. But if you wanted the rate of fire and firepower, then I would recommend Sketchkin as a replacement for 5.7.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
Stashkin has slightly better buffs,
yeah,
but she's not as good as a tank as 5.7.
yeah.
And
So they have different uses. So of course, if you have 5.7 and you need to use a 5.7 for her skill, she would overcap your crit rate and rate of fire because her 5.7 skill buffs crit rate and rate of fire, while PPK's Annihilation Command gives 10% damage and 35% crit. So you get the damage, you get a slightly lower damage buff rather than a rate of fire. But for Sketchkin, it's only rate of fire.
now, the thing about Stechkin is that not all of us are blessed to have Stechkin. I heard someone was in a drought, they didn't get Stechkin for a very, very long time. But I heard that they finally got Stechkin sometime last week, did they not?
Yeah, he did. The meme's that.
The meme is dead. The meme is dead. Alright, so so now I'm gonna ask you guys again. Will you guys recommend PPK? Would you recommend her as a T-doll to level?
Depends how far you are in the game. in my opinion. So if you're just starting out, then no, you don't want to be leveling PPK. However, I think PPK should be leveled with your first rifle handgun. So your first rifle handgun squad should be optimally your third echelon that you build up. Even your second, if you want to rush building one for some reason, and it helps newer players conserve cores.
PPK is one of the kind of like the T-Doll that's like glanced over by most people because people see rarity as, oh, 2-star doll must be not usable. But for me, at least, uh, once I saw the utility of PPK, I would realize that PPK is one of like the more important 2 stars I should level if you, because she's so easy to get, right? You don't have to worry about cores to level her. It's just after you start up, after you finish your first team, when you're leveling other dolls, you should always have a PPK level just because you know how easy it is to get dupes of her. Um, just because of the utility she brings, not only to rifles team, but mainly for like ARs and other handgun teams. I wouldn't recommend her for rifle teams, but if you're starting out and you don't have much handguns to buff your rifle teams, she's okay to use. But she falls pretty hard later on when you're optimized for your rifle team. As you guys stated earlier, uh, when you have the crit scope, the VFL maxed and calibrated and enhanced, the crit scope gives 48% crit. Uh, The rifle itself has 40% innate crit, so that enables 88% crit already for your rifles. So if you put a PPK or another uh, critical buffing um, handgun on that team, then you're not really getting much benefits because 100% crit and 88% crit is really negligible. You're only getting like a 5.8% fire power buff. So you can rather, instead of using PPK for those teams, you can have either a firepower or rate of fire Tito.
Mhm.
But for rate of fires, there are better T-dolls than PPK.
Right, for sure.
All right, so let's get into some echelons. So, Yuzu, you made this next team, which is a 5 handgun echelon. So, first off, why would someone use a team of 5 handguns?
For me, it started off as a meme, but then I realized that after watching a lot of Koreans do it, I realized that it's a really good like boss farming event. So right now, this is just a bare, kind of like a standard one that I see people use. But depending on the boss you fight and the difficulty, you may switch out some of the handguns. But this is typically something I see the Koreans run when you have to do a lot of damage support, but sometimes you can't kill bosses fast enough. So for replacements, you can replace Wellrod with like MK23 for more firepower, so that ZZ, the axe handgun, can one shot bosses. But usually this team is really cheap on the resources and it's really efficient in like handling the bosses. Um, Fun fact: this team was so broken Mika had to nerf handguns because of these things. Initially, the cooldowns for the handguns was 3 seconds. So as you know, most are I think all handguns initial cooldowns are now
Six
6 seconds.
seconds. Yeah, six
It used to
seconds.
be 3 seconds. So imagine starting the battle, waiting, you know, 3 seconds, have all your cooldowns up, and you already know how broken handguns buff are at times 5. Imagine having all that and just annihilating stuff within like 4 seconds of like
Annihilation
fights.
command literally becomes annihilation command.
This is the reason why handguns have 6 second cooldowns. And as you can see, variations of the handgun team nowadays differ with the new dolls, but generally you can see a lot more handgun teams being used for fast farming just because how powerful they are with their 6 second initial cooldowns, and you know, people overlook handguns because they're just general utility, but having a whole team of them is actually really meta now.
I actually
I'd
use
like
a
to add.
5 handgun team. Okay, go ahead.
So one thing I want to add is that a 5 handgun team is not recommended for newer players for obvious reasons being they're pretty hard to and see like 4 handguns in the screen right now, which are 5 star. And in addition, another good thing about 5 handgun teams is that handguns have the highest movement speed in the game at 15, where SMGs have a movement speed of 20. So that extra movement speed lets you kite bosses better and enemies better. So while they're not as tanky as SMGs, they can still get their job done by kiting.
Hmm. And I use handgun teams I actually use a 5 handgun team similar to this one to farm Arctic Warfare. I use it to farm the chapter 1-4 for Arctic Warfare when I was farming for 5-7 because a 5 handgun team at times 5 links you could clear out the mobs, not a problem. Oh, Duckley just pulled a Ryby. Grats.
I
Ryby's actually in the next slide.
I also want to note that for all the handguns for EN right now, they're all interchangeable except for the Axe Gang, ZZ, because she's your main I guess boss killer, and all the other handguns just support her. But all of them are interchangeable depending on what enemies you need to fight. So some replacement could be 5-7 Calico Colt Revolver. Um, the list goes on depending on what kind of tile buff you need to buff your ZZ with to be able to one shot the boss.
Alright, so that's with the 5 handgun team. Let's put it in a more practical sense that the normal player would be able to utilize it in. So handguns, as we discussed earlier, are valuable in a night battle echelon. So here we have a AR SMG team with 1 handgun in it that Yuzu created, and we do have a Ryby in here. Duckley just pulled a Ryby, and you're gonna see a Ryby here. So Yuzu, interesting note here. UMP 45 is not in the main tank position. What happened? What's going on? What is this?
So one of my reasoning is since we're gonna go over UMP 45 later on today, I just want to bring up her tile buff real quick. So her tile buff is 18% damage and 30% critical rate. But her skill is just a smoke grenade, so it's just utility. So one thing about why I put PBK in this spot is because PBK's tile buff gives rate of fire, and it also gives a small margin of crit. However, her skill also gives crit rate, so it kind of like mitigates the low crit rate from the tile buff that she gets. So efficiently, she gives the same crit as UMP. However, the thing is, with the two ARs I'm using for the main damage dealers, Groza or OTS 14 and 9A A1.
Yeah, 9A91.
Yeah, 9A91. Their skill is a firepower self buff, and their initial cooldown for those skill is 5 seconds. And Groza is 200% damage increase, and 9A91 is 180, if I recall. And
Jeez.
Yeah, 180. That's correct.
yeah, so as you can see, the damage steroids is like already huge enough that having another 18% on top of it really doesn't really matter because you're already giving huge tile buffs and the crit rate to both ARs when PPK activates her skill 1 second later, and basically her skill acts like a VFL for them at night because during night battles you can't equip crit scope. So you really want to give your ARs PEQ so it can hit stuff, and having PPK give crit to the whole team is really beneficial than having just a 30% crit from UMP. But you can see that UMP also buffs the crit for Groza, so that makes Groza like the main damage dealer. And if you're wondering like how this team works, you would just swap the position early on, um, right when the battle starts. So then UMP would do the most of the tanking if you're afraid, because the low HP of PPK.
Okay. All right. So that covers PPK. Now we get to go over the War Goddess herself. Diablito, you took the time for this one. I believe you have a certain penchant for M14, correct?
Eight.
Not the toes.
Feet. All right. Let's get this cracking. So, M14, 3-star, basically stats of a 5-star. She is like so good for her rarity, like it's unbelievable. Let's take a look at her stats. Her health is pretty dank, literally. She has 420 HP at level 100. She has 108 damage, 91 accuracy. I mean, not 91, 71 accuracy, might be. 27 evasion, 43 rate of fire, and a 40% crit chance. Now her buffs, not too bad actually. Reduced skill cooldown by 12%. This is definitely pretty good. But her skill, amazing. Increases her own damage by 60% for 5 seconds. That's like stupid good. Like she'll just annihilate the enemies. Which is why people usually like meme, not really meme, but like call her like the 6-star goddess. So for my team, this is what I built. As you can see, it's different from your usual WAD2K SVD team, because WAD2K SVD is more of a rate of fire based, not rate of fire based team, yeah. While M14 and Lee are damage based, which is why there's a Stechkin there. You can give them a little bit more pack of a punch. Now, like the difference is that it's not really too different from your WAD2K SVD team, other than the two main rifles, of course, and that Stechkin is there instead of Grizzly. These two dolls, more often than not, are gonna annihilate the enemies, especially armored enemies, because they'll just penetrate through them ASAP. And although you can use this team against like the Aegises, Manticores, etc., and also like most mobs, but they do fall short against scouts in the nighttime due to the fact that the rifles can't equip PQs. So you try putting this up against a scout team in nighttime, all you're gonna see is miss, 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 like all day.
And since this is the firepower buffing team. This is different than the radar fire buffing team. Currently, we really don't have as much need for this firepower based team, as this team has so much overkill. Like this team just screams overkill, doesn't it?
That's where it falls a little short compared to WAD2K SVD.
However, for future content, you're going to be needing this team, because in future content, we're going to be having some, as they call it, thicker boys that we have to deal with. So that overkill is suddenly really nice. I'd rather be hitting them harder than hitting them faster with the WA SVD team.
Someone's asking if you can replace Dashkin with 5-7. That's just a personal preference. In my opinion, or actually no, this is facts. Stechkin has better tau buffs than 5-7. However, Stechkin is not as good as a tank as 5-7. So if you're using this team for longer maps where you have to fight multiple nodes, then I would replace Stechkin with 5-7. Just because she can help out Kaliko and Valra in the front line by swapping with them and relieving the tanking stress. However, if you're only going to be using this echelon for maybe 2 or 3, maybe 5 battles, then Stechkin will be better just because for that many battles, the frontline handguns can take a hit and can tank.
All right, so that wraps it up for M14. Now we get to go over the first of the UMP sisters.
I mean, technically third, but
Well, yeah, there's three of them, but we don't talk about that third one yet. So the first one, we actually have a special edition, UMP9. It's a Valentine's Day skin, and Valentine's Day is coming up in about 2 weeks. Well, about less than 2 weeks. So make sure you get something. And also, the Chinese Lantern Festival is coming up in about 2 weeks, which is much akin to Valentine's Day here in the US, correct, Yuzu?
Chinese New Year and Valentine's Day.
No, 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 Lantern Festival.
Oh yeah, Lantern Festival is coming up. Yeah, that is the similarity of Valentine's Day for Chinese.
Yeah, Chinese New Year is coming in about 2, 3 days, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the 5th.
Ooh, oh, I know I'm gonna be busy for that day. But in any case, so Yuzu and Corsage, you both worked on this one together.
Okay, so I'll go over some of the Tabos. Actually, I'll go over the stats. So she has a 880 HP at level 100, which equates to 176 HP per dummy. She has 26 damage, 14 accuracy, 76 evasion, which is pretty high, 87 rate of fire, and 5% crit chance. Her tile buffs affects the assault rifle in these tiles, and it gives 30% accuracy and 12% rate of fire. Her skill is flashbang, and basically she throws a flashbang that stuns enemy within a 2.5 radius for 4 seconds. Interesting note about the flashbang skill: depending on the rarity of your dolls, only thing that changes is the duration of how long the enemy is flashed or stunned by. So Type 79, a 5-star, will have a higher uh, duration. So 4.5 seconds rather than 4 seconds. While a weaker version, sorry Panda, your waifu, Type 64, uh, lower uh lower flash duration, so Pepe hands. Interesting note I want to go in before I talk more about UMP is that she's my favorite UMP just because she's voiced by Mamako Noto. So in her in-game files, she always says that she wants to start a family, and recently her voice actor got married and is expecting a child. So, fun fact.
Aww.
This is why I like UMP9.
Alright, and by the way, everyone, if you haven't already, please check the Discord. I have updated the trading cards section, and please download the UMP 9 and 45 Special Edition trading cards, as they will be disappearing in 2 days, so make sure you get them now.
So, of course, we'll go over some examples of, well, an example of like a team that you can use UMP9, and we'll clarify some more.
yeah. So what I went with this team is to have one AR attack the backline, one AR attack the front line. So what I mean by that is RFB when the skill activates will have similar target priority as, or will have the same target priority as rifles, which we discussed early in the. And FAL will launch grenades, which will clear out the front line. And the problem with using RFB is that her rate of fire is ridiculously low for an AR. In fact, it's the lowest out of all ARs. So right here we have two SMGs that will be buffing her rate of fire. So we have Shrimp, which buffs her rate of fire by 18% and gives her a 30% crit buff, which is with RFB's innate 30% crit chance and a crit scope of 40. She's gonna have 70% crit chance, and with a 30% crit buff, she will cap a 100% crit. In addition, UMP9 gives her a 12% rate of fire buff, which is pretty decent. And additionally, Ribby here will be buffing firepower by 20% to both FAL and RFB, which will appreciate the buff quite a bit. And when her skill activates, she'll be boosting firepower, rate of fire, and accuracy by 25%. But yeah, and the thing is, like, all of the backline AR's skill activations occurs at 6 seconds, and in contrast, the UMP9 stun grenade happens at 5 seconds. So the theory behind this team is that you want to use UMP9's flashbang to stun the front, and have FAOs, Ribbies, and RFB skill active at the same time, and they can take care of their respective targeting or targets, frontline and backline respectively. Shrimp is just there to provide additional support in the beginning, just because she has lower initial cooldown at the backline ARs, so it'll help UMP tank a little better by stripping away some dummy links of the enemy.
I want to add in the fact that UMP9 can be used as a main tank or an off tank for her utility ability. In this case, she's being used as a main tank in this comp, and in the next, or in some comps where you might use her sister with her, she might be used as a uh, off tank.
Okay, so that wraps up UMP9. Let's get into UMP45 next. The more petite of the twins.
Yeah, so her stats shown on the screen are she has 925 health, which is 185 health, or sorry, 925 health at 5 times length. Sorry, I should clarify. And she sports 28 damage, 13 accuracy, 74 evasion, and 82 rate of fire. Critical chance is kind of not really necessary for SMGs, let's be honest. And something I want to point out about the stats is that her evasion and health are above average for SMGs, so she'll be a pretty decent tank. And what makes it really special are her tau buffs. The tau buffs are that she buffs all 3 ARs behind her, and if she's in the 5 position, of course. She'll be buffing damage by 18% and critical rate by 30%, which is the most offensive tau buff that you can have in this game currently, for an SMG at least. And some trivia about the tau buff is that 18% damage and 30% crit is another, or is shared by another doll in the game, and that's M4A1. And I think it's pretty cool because UMP45 is the leader of Squad 404, Team 404, and M4A1 is the leader of the AR team. And they both buff ARs by 18% damage and 30% crit. So I really like that parallelism right there. So her skill is Smoke Grenade. It has a 1 second initial cooldown, which is really short. You know, it'll come out as soon as she sees an enemy, essentially, just because there's walking time before you start shooting. And she throws a grenade that decreases the enemy's rate of fire by 40% and movement speed by 50% within a radius of 2.5 units for 4 seconds. So this grenade can be used very well in tandem with AR or grenade ARs because you know, you want the grenades to hit as many enemies as possible. And by slowing down the frontline AR or the frontline enemies with a smoke grenade, you're helping them bunch together. So I came up with a team, and well, it's actually not a team. It's a well, I was gonna start with the team template, which is UMP45, Ribby, and G11, because I generated hundreds of ARSMG teams, and I noticed a pattern that all the highest DPS ARSMG teams contain those 3 units: UMP45, Ribby Rolls, and G11.
And Diablito, can you just remove Homate and PPS43 real quick?
Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm just gonna keep talking about the 3-man core, as I like to call it, the whole consisting of UMP45, Ribby Rolls, and G11. So the key part about this composition is that you're buffing firepower a ton of firepower to G11, which is the stat that she lacks the most. So she's getting critical chance, 30% firepower from UMP45 and Ribby's skill buffs, or sorry, tau buffs. And another thing is that at the 6-second mark, both G11 skill and Ruby Rolls' skill will activate at the same time. So that means that G11 will be shooting 3 times as many bullets, and Ruby will be buffing G11 by 25% damage, 25% rate of fire, which the 25% rate of fire is pretty important because she will cap G11's rate of fire. So yeah, that just goes over the holy trinity, as I like to call it, of AR SMG teams. So I came up with a team based on this. It consists of G41 and P, being the AR and SMGs respectively. So I went over what the trio skills are and their tile buffs. So I'm going to discuss PPS and G41, what they do, what their roles are in this team. As I mentioned earlier, G11's rate of fire will be capped out once Ruby's skill initiates. So we don't want to be buffing G11's rate of fire anymore. So we want to have an SMG, a side SMG, an off-tank SMG that will be buffing G11's, like some other set, optimally rate or optimally firepower, and that's what PPS does. So PPS will buff G11's firepower by 12%, and Ribby. However, Ribby doesn't have an offensive skill, so it's a little inconsequential. In addition, the G11 will be buffing PPS's damage by 30% and her evasion by 10%, which increases her grenade's damage output. And what's interesting about PPS's grenade is that it does 6 times her firepower's damage, or firepower as damage, and also has a radius of 2.5 yards, which is larger than most grenade ARs.
She has the best hand grenade in the game, doesn't she?
She does, because she has the highest firepower of all the hand grenade SMGs.
Nice. And doesn't she have the? Don't you usually pair her with Zas? You pair them together, Zas and PPS 43.
Right. I was going to talk about that a little later. But the reason why I put G41 here instead of Zas is because, if you recall in the last episode, I put Zas with Og, so I wanted to highlight another A. So G41 is, as most players call it, the golden standard of AR. Like, you can never go wrong with using G41 in an AR. So I just put it there just because you can pretty much put any AR in that number 1 position that you see on the screen that G41 is safe. But as Panda said, you can put Zas in there. And what's interesting is that PPS's grenade launches at 3 seconds, and Zaz's grenade launches at 4 seconds. But PPS's grenade has a short launching time just because of how PPS throws her grenade. However, Zaz launches her grenade, which means there's very
Instantly.
little travel. Yeah, it's not instant, but it's a lot shorter than, say, Stop Mod or
Yeah.
416, which throw their nades.
Yeah, the animation for it is very short.
Correct.
Yes. To answer one of the questions from chat, yes, Ruby can be replaced with M4 and Og when you get her later, but as a caster myself and a personal bias with Ruby being my waifu, yes, I put Ruby in all my teams. So that's my personal preference.
And yeah, also the second part, yes, you can replace G41 with any AR pretty.
Okay. I believe that wraps it up for UMP 45, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so now we get into a very deep part of the podcast. So deep, I'm going to link you guys a Google Doc. So in the chat, I just linked a Google Doc of the what we will be going over. So please feel free to click it, look and just follow along. I will let you know, spoiler warning. There is some very, very sensitive things to the story that goes on in this section. So, spoilers, if you do not want to be spoiled for some of the history of this game, please leave now. But we're going into the rabbit hole that is the lore of this game. Originally, the point of it, we were going to go into about, let's go over everything since the beginning up to the first mission. That was a terrible mistake. Like a terrible mistake. There's just so much to cover. So what we're doing is we're going to break it down into sections and to make it a bit more digestible. So what we're going to be going over here is we're going to be going over the T-Doll lore. Now, we all started this game. We started this game because we saw cute girls. And to be fair, that's what got me interested. It got a lot of us interested into it. There was a quote by someone I know. All things have a beginning. If we're going to start off with the main reason why anyone got attracted to Girls Frontline, it's the T-Dolls. But if we take that apart of that T-Doll marketing, it reveals a very rich history, which is very surprising for a gacha waifu game. We gotta know the girls for what's beneath the cuteness and learn about their origins that leads into this wonderful world building material. And I can see, guys, the lore is deep. It is very deep. Alright, so if you look along, you can see part 1. Currently, we are using second generation T-Dolls. We're only going up to generation 0. So we're going to just go just generation 0. We'll go over generations 1 and 2 on another podcast. But for the time being, let's go to the beginning. Alright, so as we know, the T-Dolls we have, a second generation, they were developed by a company called IOP Manufacturing. I think we've all seen that before. It's where we go make T-Dolls, where we ragecraft and all that. And some features of the second generation T-Dolls is dummy linking and neural cloud storage. I think those are terms we're all familiar with. And the T-Dolls we have are primarily built for combat. Special notes, the T-Dolls we use are not civilian T-Dolls. The T-Dolls we use are actually paramilitary. There are some civilian T-Dolls in our ranks, but they are very, very few. Some
Corfield.
examples of T. Oh, go ahead.
I just said Corfield in the cafe.
Yeah, that's gonna be one. Another one that's mainly that was a civilian T-Doll was Sat 8. Sat 8 was originally made for. She did odd jobs all over the place, and she got turned into a military T-Doll. Alright, so let's get into Generation Zero. Before T-Dolls were even a thing, we had the A-Dolls. Now, why are they called A-Dolls? Well, if you look at the designs here, there's ALR50, ALR50E2, ALR51C. So that is where the A came from. And aren't civilian T-Dolls called A-Dolls? No, they are not. We'll probably go about that in the next episode when we review Generations 1 and 2, if you guys like the lore section. If there's good feedback about the lore, then we'll keep doing lore. If not, then we'll stop doing it. So the first generation of T-Dolls, they weren't really dolls like we know them. They were like Rob right there. If you look on the screen, you see Rob from the old Nintendo days. They were more like him. And they just Generation Zero, they didn't do much impressive. They would simply lift this object, put it there. And the first generation of T-Doll or A-Dolls were made by an engineer called Waitkin. And he was the owner of the company called Libet General Manufacturing. And as we know, they were very just modular. Oh, go back. So there were 3 types T-Dolls that Waitkin made. The first one is the ALR50T. The T stands for testing, and if you look in the Google document, you can see the footnote 1. ALR refers to auto label robots, C refers to common, T refers to testing. The ALR50 was extremely high cost, an intense installation, and required immense maintenance. In short, it was a piece of junk. It got discontinued. The next one was the ALR50E2, which sported low maintenance costs, easy to maintain, but it had to be modulated, which means parts had to be changed if you wanted to do a different function. And then the last one is the ALR51C. The ALR51C was different. It was a more simplistic design, but it required a smart AI to operate. But at this time, technology did not have an AI. So essentially, the ALR51C was an empty vessel. It had great potential, but it couldn't do anything without a brain. So, being able to only move one of these 3 models forward, The ALR50E2 was put into production and became the ALR52P. And meanwhile, the ALR51C was put into storage. All right, now we can go to the next slide. So when they're going on with it, the ALR51C, as we stated, this is the one that had the AI needed. It needed the AI to be good. Just so happens that about a little bit more than a year after Whitekin developed these dolls, the Worcester United Electronics Manufacturing Company, which is a big mouthful, received orders for the Pan-European Military Union to develop an automaton for the assault artillery vehicles. And the lead developer and owner of that company was known as Mikachi, and he specialized in developing AI. But due to his funding, he didn't have a chassis or a vessel for his AI to go into. And the project from the Pan-European Military Union required him to have this AI and vessel together. Just so happened that Whitekin, the creator of the ALF-51C, needed an AI for his, and the two met at a dinner party, and it was a match made in heaven. The two together had the two missing parts. The T doll, or the A doll, finally had the AI it needed, and the AI developer finally had some hardware to put his AI into. Thus, they made the TD01. So the TD01. Again, this was a strengthened and improved frame of the ALR51 CT. We actually have a picture over there, so if you could get a visualization of it, we actually have a robot from Boston Dynamics. They
Wait, what happened? I think Panda muted himself or something.
Apologies about that, boys. Can I get an F for Panda?
Cass is having some technical issues right now.
Uh-oh. All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can. Please continue.
All right, where did I leave off at?
Start off at the beginning of the TD01.
Yeah, you
Alright,
said
sorry about
Boston Dynamics and then just died.
Okay, so if you notice, we have... Oh, I got murdered for calling UMP-45 petite. Alright, so the TD01, if you notice, we have a Boston Dynamics robot right there, and that's pretty much what they would essentially look like. They look nothing like the T-dolls we have. And the fact of this body was to help improve efficiency and operation. The human body is amazing. We have elbows, knees, our neck. We can rotate our necks around. We can move our elbows. We can jump. We're very agile compared to machines. And this unit, a TD01, was a great success with the Pan-European Military Union because they saw the potential of what this could be. And Mikachi and Whitekin came to an agreement that they want to continue working together, and they had an amazing friendship. They made the TD1 even better. They added synthetic muscles, fake muscles, in other words, to help improve the agility and support its movement, and it made this new model called the CSD02. Now, the CSD02, it was improved in both structure and software, but the hardware parameters needed to keep up the AI were not that good. And as a force, they had to reference some old blueprints to make it function more correctly. Now, it was until later that we meet a third company called the Schlesber Advanced Technologies. Dia, should be next slide. So, Schlesber Advanced Technologies, at this time, it was proven that AIs could not replace humans. The robots were too rigid, they weren't as agile. But the CSD02 had a great strong body and working AI, but it lacked dexterity. They were prone to breaking down because they couldn't handle large workloads. It was very difficult for them. So what they did, the military did, is they got this third-party company, Schlesber, and they worked. Wetka and Whitekin, Mikachi and Whitekin worked with Schlesber to make the next generation. What Schlesber did is they added sensors to help detect areas of weakness, as well as sensors of gravitational forces. Where's this robot's center of gravity? That way, they could detect the CSD-02's movement and dexterity. As you all know, if you were to swing a sword, you can swing a sword down with great force, but you have the brain to visualize where you're going to swing. You have the strength to bring the sword down. But do you have the agility to strike accurately? That was the third piece missing, and Schlesber made that happen. So the next slide, the CSD-03H. This is the new doll that they came up with. This is the model with increased agility and accuracy. With the increased agility and accuracy, it was made awesome. The success of this new doll attracted the eyes of General Carter of the Army's General Staff. At this point, the military was getting very interested because they were seeing the advancements going on. They was like, hey, this has potential. This can possibly make mechanical soldiers. And with more research, they could replace infantry. And to make sure that this happened, like to make sure this project continued, General Carter saw to it that Mikachi, Wetkin, and Schlesber all got generous funding to make one company. This company was founded, and the name of this company? Important Operation Prototype Manufacturing, called IOP Manufacturing. So we're going to leave it off right here for part one, and the rabbit hole goes much deeper than this. Please note this was only the part one. If you guys like the lore segment, we'll definitely do a part two, and you guys can learn more about the T-dolls that we have. If you like this format, let us know in feedback suggestions. But that's it. That's going to be the end of the podcast. We're going to take some Q&A questions now. So if you guys have any questions about what we went over or any more details about the lore, please feel free to ask them.
I like that comment Duckley just said. More like IDW manufacturing.
There is a lot of IDWs in there.
That's the life of most of us, unfortunately. Grizzly, please come
I
home.
got a
I
lot of
require a dupe.
IDWs. Yes, that is the Suomi what emote. We literally took it out and put it on the stream. How about the AR squad? Well, the AR squad is going to be much later on. Remember, we're going into the origins of the T-dolls, where they all came from. Can T-dolls shoot other guns other than the ones they are named after? No, well, they cannot. Due
Yes.
to... No?
Generation 1 can.
Oh,
Generation 2.
Generation 1. Yeah, Generation 1 can, but our T-dolls, they cannot, no. Because he said the ones they're named after, so that's why I assumed it was Generation 2.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, sorry about that.
So if it says, for example, Wa2K, she's only able to use the Wa2K weapon because of what a system called the ASST system. The ASST system was a system developed by a certain someone that I'm not going to name, as that's going to be in a later podcast for lore, probably next episode. And what it does, it makes it so that way the girls, the moment they pick up this weapon, it's linked to them. They know it. The weapon has sensors built into it, so the girl can recognize it. They have this weapon. They know immediately how it works. You guys have seen anime, how the anime hero picks up a sword and then he looks at it. He's like, I know this weapon. It already feels like an extension of myself, right? For T-Dolls, that is the same thing when they pick up the weapon. When Watuke picks up that weapon, she knows how to reload it. She knows how to aim properly. She knows the quirks of the weapon to use it to its most effectiveness. While 2K is Kirito, actually all the second generation T-Dolls with their own their own weapon. But I know lore is a very big thing for this. What is the earliest year the series takes place? So the earliest thing that T-Dolls when they came into play, probably about I believe it's a 2033 if I'm not mistaken. I have to check my documents. But I do know that the origins of our game, the history of it, dates way back to like 1903 or something,
Right.
which is far further back. And that is mega spoilers. Why are T-Dolls dressed the way they are? That is not a question I don't know the answer to, unfortunately. I do know that the T-Dolls are given uniforms, and these are the uniforms they wear.
Ask Mika.
Do T-Doll...
They make the
Ask Mika.
costumes, right?
Do T-Dolls wear skirts as a cooling system? I don't know that question, unfortunately, so that one I wouldn't be able to answer either. Ask me, and the Q&A has actually come up here in the next couple days, so I'm going to have fun with that. Say it will too. These are pretty non-standard uniforms. Yeah, they're not very standard uniforms. I'm going to agree with that. All right, so I guess that's about it. So thank you everyone for being here. Next podcast, we will be going over shotguns and machine guns and how they work together. We'll be giving some examples of shotguns and machine guns. And then we'll also be reviewing 4 more T-Dolls, which we'll have announced later on. If you haven't already, please go to the Discord and make sure you download the special edition gifts, the trading cards, as well as the normal ones. Other than that, anything else you guys want to wrap up?
I think we're about done here.
Yeah, thanks guys for watching.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right, guys. So thank you very much, and you guys have a great night.
Peace out, everybody. Take care.